today's featured guest, Peter Schiff from Euro-Pacific Capital and the author of Crash Proof. Returning to the show to discuss the markets and economic issues facing the nation, Peter Schiff, President and Chief Global Strategist of Euro-Pacific and best-selling author. Hello, Peter.
Hi, how are you?
Peter, let's begin with this latest round of QE. That's what they're calling quantitative easing these days, or firing up the printing press. The Fed's attempt to revive this economic patient, well, it's once again printing more money, buying up toxic mortgage-backed securities and treasuries. Investors have responded in a predictable fashion. They're selling the greenback.
They're going to, kill the patient. QE2 is the government's way of saying inflation. It's just a euphemism for something bad, and they're trying to dress it up and make it sound like it's something good. But, you actually had the Federal Reserve in their most recent state come right out and say that they're not happy with the rate of inflation. They think it's too low. They want it to be worse. They want higher inflation. And so, we're going to get higher inflation, and inflation is the act of debasing your currency. The reason that prices go up is because the money has less value. And so you need more money to buy things, and you're seeing that, and people are understanding that. They're selling dollars. They're buying gold. They're buying silver. They're buying commodities, whether it's agricultural commodities or industrial or energy. But they're getting out of the currency that the Fed is creating, and for good reason. And the people who don't understand this, Barack Obama talked about, he doesn't want to raise taxes on anybody who makes under $200,000. Well, inflation is a tax, and it's a cruel tax because it hits the hardest, the people who can least afford to pay it, the working poor. It hits people on fixed incomes, retirees. I mean, this is how Obama is paying for this big socialist agenda, is by taxing America, by debasing their money and causing the prices of everything that they need to buy to go up. So, next time when, a year from now when people are going to the supermarket and they're just shocked at how much money everything costs, all of that is a tax. All that, the increase in price between what you used to pay and the much higher prices is a tax to the government. What about those Americans who are still working for a living and have to buy their own food?
17% U6 number, which used to be the official unemployment rate. And, of course, now we're stuck stubbornly over 9.5% unemployment 14 months in a row, as you've written on recently and we heard last week. That's the longest stretch in 62 years since the government's been publishing the number. Are we stuck at a plateau here with unemployment? And if so, is this quantitative easing actually going to be enough?
What's going to create real jobs are incentives for individuals to take risks, incentives for capital formation, and that means much higher interest rates to provide a return for those who supply capital. We need to encourage savings. What it's going to entail is reductions in government regulations and lowering of taxes, because the government makes it very difficult to create jobs. I mean, I'm a businessman myself, and the government is making it practically impossible for me to create jobs. In fact, I'm having to go out of the country to create jobs because I can't do it here. And it's becoming more and more difficult. I mean, America is becoming one of the most difficult places to employ people, one of the least attractive places. And so businesses will do whatever they can to avoid hiring people. But that's because of government. And so the government has to stop doing that. They have to stop regulating and taxing the very people that they expect to create jobs. They make it so difficult to create jobs, and they wonder where they're all going when they disappear.
Well, that's really the error with this model recently, this idea that you can simply, rob one group to the benefit of another. As we tax the supposed rich folks who make around $200,000 a year or more, that can be your neighborhood plumber who's working from his own garage. And as you say, this is the backbone of the economy. These are the folks, the small and medium-sized business owners who are creating the jobs. If they're feeling the pinch of these additional taxes and changing the rules in the middle of the game here, they're far less likely to try to employ anyone else.
The government makes it too expensive. It makes it too difficult. I mean, that's how I'm finding it myself, that it's not even worth it. I'd rather not grow my business than have to subject myself to all the new regulations if I decide I want to hire more people. The government makes it cost prohibitive. I mean, we're moving to the point, I believe, where more and more people are going to end up getting jobs from government, because government is going to be the only ones willing to hire. But that's a huge change in our standard of living because government jobs produce nothing. And so if we have a bunch of people working who aren't producing, then we have nothing to buy with our paychecks. So we have a diminished standard of living. Remember, back in the old Soviet Union, they had no unemployed people. Everybody had a job. That was one of the things that the Soviets would always say in their propaganda, we have no unemployment like they have in America. Everybody has a job. And that was true. Everybody had a job. But then you had to wait in line 6 hours for a loaf of bread because everybody was working, but there was nothing to show for it because all the work was being assigned by bureaucrats. It wasn't a market-based economy.
You know, when you read Genso Parsons' Dying of Money, though, Peter, he points out the same thing in the Weimar Republic leading up to the big collapse. There was practically no unemployment, but folks weren't producing anything. I mean, they were mostly shuffling papers. There was an endless bureaucracy, all types of jobs where very little was manufactured or actually produced. Quite similar to what we're seeing here, but I wanted to move on, if we could, to your book, Crash Proof. You allude to this ultimate economic collapse that could rival even that of the Great Depression. And I'd like to know where you think we are right now in terms of that scenario.
I know with certainty that what the Fed is doing will not work because it can't work. Just like if you pour gasoline on a fire, I know the fire's not going to go out. So I know what the government is doing is wrong. And unfortunately, they're doing everything that I said they would do, everything that I wrote they would do in Crash Proof. And so right now they're making all the mistakes. So if the government's goal were to create a depression worse than the 1930s, they're on course. They're going to succeed. And what's going to make this depression so much worse is going to be because it's an inflationary depression where rather than the cost of living falling for the unemployed and for people who have jobs, the cost of living is going to be rising sharply so that even people who maintain their jobs are going to feel a lot poorer.
And you know, with the FHA, Fannie, Freddie underwriting up to 95+% of new home loans, only 3 or 4% down payments, don't you think that the home buyer has little to no skin in the game? This is going to lead to reckless consumption, and that's exactly what seems to have gotten the economy into the current mess that it's in.
Well, yeah, I mean, what government doesn't want is to recognize that the problem with the housing market was that all those government guarantees and subsidies caused housing prices to be higher than they should be. And it caused bad decisions to be made. It caused lenders to lend against collateral that really wasn't there. And people bought homes they couldn't afford, and people borrowed money against those homes and bought things that they couldn't afford. All of our behavior was influenced in very destructive ways by government policy. Now, when all of these, if you remove all these artificial price supports from housing prices have to fall. We have to liquidate these bad investments. We have to let the market realign home prices with reality, and behavior has to change accordingly. But the government doesn't want that to happen. The government wants to maintain these high home prices because it doesn't want any of the banks to fail that have loaned. And so in order to maintain that illusion, you require more government intervention, not less. So you simply compound the problems that led to the crisis. And that's what we've done. And in fact, if you take what's going on now with foreclosure moratoriums, now that lenders can't even foreclose, when borrowers stop paying, everybody's going to stop paying once they know that the banks have no recourse. They can live there in perpetuity for free. And number two, why would any private lender want to loan money when he knows right up front that, well, even if the guy doesn't pay me back, I might not even be able to foreclose. I mean, we have completely destroyed the American housing market. It is now a complete function of government, and there is no more real economic forces behind it. And the government will just keep churning out money to keep prices of homes artificially high.